right, welcome back. Welcome back. Another episode of Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black Culture podcast. Sometimes I forget. I have to get in the moment.
I saw.
And I was like, where am I? What am I doing right now? I'm doing this. I'm doing it.
I saw.
What's
I
up?
was like,
How's everything going?
pretty good, living. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You asked me about my shirt color earlier.
Yeah.
For you, it's salmon. I said it's like a peach for me. Usually, like randomly throughout like the 2 3 years that I've done like video recording, I'll pop on like a bright color shirt, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like me trying to counter the low. Like it's been raining like these past 2 days. It's cloudy for like
Uh-huh.
the first time in like 2 months. So like the external woes and comfort is like just relax, calm down. It's like, nah, I gotta pop. I gotta pop a little bit. I gotta
Yeah.
be vibrant for this episode. So I'm hoping it helps. Hoping it helps.
And me, I'm just wearing a different graphic tee every single time.
You the
Like, look at this graphic tee.
graphic tea killer.
Yeah, exactly. Jack Nicholson
Oh,
in The Shining.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, to start off today, we're talking about Solange's "The Seat at the Table." I forgot to mention that 2016
Mm-hmm.
album by Solange, her third studio album, and one of my favorite albums of all time. I'm excited to talk about it. But
That's good
before
to
we
know.
before we kick off, if you wanted to talk about what's going on in Mississippi, Jackson,
Yeah.
Mississippi, more specifically.
Yeah. So Jackson, Mississippi is 80% black, and they are undergoing like a very, very bad water crisis to the point that there's no drinkable water. Um, and they're being told to boil it. But I've been seeing video footage of people that live in Jackson, Mississippi, turning on their faucets, and the water is literally black.
Right, right.
So it's just kind of like, what is anyone doing to help? Um, I don't know. It just made me feel kind of depressed a little bit defeated because we've seen this happen in Flint, Michigan, and it's happened in other places, but it doesn't get the same type of notoriety. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, how do we have $17 billion to send to Ukraine, but we have nothing to help the people in our own country to have access to safe water, because water is a human right. And people in America, this country that talks about how great it is constantly, the people that live here talk about how great it is constantly, and our own citizens, the people that live here, they don't have access to drinking water, clean drinking water, safe drinking water. So it's just a little infuriating to see how every step of the way these people have been failed.
Right.
It's 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 a little bit much.
Yeah, it's. I feel like when we come on here, we do it every 2 weeks. And sometimes we take breaks to kind of reassess. We always get. I feel like this is our theme, right? Like we come here with like it feels heavy, right?
Yeah.
The news. Not that the news always feels bad. It just always feels like there's just an a unique negative experience going on for like a group of black people. Um,
Right.
and later on, it's been like probably like within like 2 weeks, I found out that it was a majority black people that lived there. I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
it automatically adds that somewhat like this it, it's a series of people not giving a fuck, right?
Right. Exactly.
Like if it's sometimes it's just one person, right? Like the first person who didn't give a fuck, and then the new guy comes in, like whoever's in charge of this, essentially, whether it's the mayor or the people who run the water system there. It's just this constant awareness of like this needs to be replaced or this needs to be fixed. And someone saying, "Nah, it's all right. Like don't worry about it. They'll be all right. They'll be all right." And knowing that it feels that way because they see there's a bunch of black people there.
Yeah.
Do you know if and I looked it up. I have it. Excuse me. I'm off right now. Hold on. Be present. All right. Do you know if the mayor reached out to Biden at all? Because I wanted to, like you brought up the money aspect.
Yeah.
Um, And I'm wondering if sometimes I wonder if it's just incompetence,
Hmm.
or these people just like not good at their job. So I was wondering if the mayor of Jackson reached out to Biden for some federal support, anything, if you
I
know.
th- I think they did, but I think the biggest issue is um, people like to draw things along party lines too. So it's been a little bit difficult in that sense. Even though like the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, is a Democrat. Um, I was reading something where it mentioned like the Great White Flight, that Jackson, Mississippi, at one point they were it was like a larger white population, and when more black people started to move in, they started to move out, which meant that they started to kind of neglect the needs of the people there because it was becoming majority black. And I'm not 100% sure, but I was reading an article earlier, but let me just double check, because I know now there's like a federal watchdog probing Jackson, Mississippi water crisis because the EPA is involved.
Right.
But that doesn't mean anything. Um, Let me just look really quick.
FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers,
Yeah.
right? It's like in all cases, right? We send aid, right? We send aid, we send support, and like what's the end result? Um, what gets better, right? What changes, right? Flint is still going through it, right?
Yeah. But
Flint is still going
apparently,
through it.
apparently, the city of Jackson unsuccessfully applied for EPA funds to rehabilitate more than 100 collapsed pipe sites in 2019.
Mm,
So it's definitely, Mississippi is receiving roughly $75 million in EPA funds to improve drinking water and wastewater systems across the state. But I don't know if any of that water is going, any of that money is going towards Jackson, Mississippi specifically. And they have over $450 million allocated um, from the COVID-19 relief package for water and infrastructure improvements. Nothing done
and
yet.
where you reading from? This is source it.
This is from NBC News.
Okay, I think I'm looking at the same article too,
Yeah.
and it's interesting that like that paragraph you read about them not receiving funding from the EPA.
Hmm.
The city of Jackson unsuccessfully applied for EPA funds to rehabilitate more than 100 pipes. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like that's it. They so it makes it so like I'm not incompetent, right? We asked for money, the EPA didn't give it to us. So now it just spreads to like overall incompetency, right? Like
Yeah.
being unsuccessful could be like the most tiniest thing, right? Someone didn't sign this, or you didn't like I don't know if you're familiar with grant writing, right? Like
Hmm.
you didn't you didn't prove your case strong enough.
Right.
You get a second chance to like do it again. Again, going back to the idea of someone saying, "All right, well, we tried. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Let's just go
It's
forward with it."
it's
And
a
this is what it becomes, right?
yeah. It's essentially one of those things where it's like you pass the buck, you pass the buck, you pass the buck. But it's also, there's no way that it's possible that Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi at this point. But then that also brings in to like what kind of responsibility do do millionaires and black millionaires who make their money mostly profiting from black people buying their music or their clothes or subscribing to them personally. You hear a lot of gossip and conversations happening between these like very successful millionaires on social media about, Kanye West feels a way about Adidas doing this to
Right,
him, and Swiss Beats gets involved in like, let's boycott Adidas. And I'm sitting here like, you guys have the funds, you have the money, even if they were to do a fundraiser or anything of that nature to help these people, but they don't, you know? And it feels like a failing because nobody wants to have responsibility to anyone else, because it's
right,
always going to be the whole dog eat dog conversation. And I just think it's depressing because I'm not hearing about anybody. And if I'm wrong, that's fine. Like, I'll come back and be like, hey, I was wrong. It looks like so and so donated this amount of money, but nothing is happening. No one is doing essentially anything, except now people are donating bottled water to these people so that they have something to drink, they have something to shower in. Like, imagine hearing, hey, if you're going to take a shower today, make sure you don't accidentally swallow it or ingest it. Close your mouth.
Right. Right.
In America, where we pride ourselves on being the best at everything, and it's just not the case. So it's just, I feel like a lot of failing, um, people just don't have a responsibility for other people. So we just, kind of go through our day. But it's just so depressing to constantly hear about rich people complaining about stuff, especially Kanye, because I've had such respect for him in the past, and this be the big thing that everybody's worrying about. I've heard more about Kanye West arguing with Adidas than I've heard about Jackson, Mississippi not having clean water. And I feel like,
Right.
why aren't we turning our focus specifically to this and how we can solve this problem so these people don't get sick, so they don't die, so they don't, get cancer, and it's not a big enough or important enough conversation for the national stage or the global stage. And I think that has to do with the fact that these people are black, and no one cares. No one cares. So it's just
Yeah.
very weird.
Yeah. So I looked it up real quick. I looked as quickly as I could. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look like anyone who any black person of notoriety
Right.
is throwing in their hand, throwing in their support. Um, like I didn't make the connection of, you brought up Kanye West. I didn't make the connection of, what his struggles are versus what the struggle for the everyday black person
Right.
is. Um, I go by the belief that no one owes me anything, or like, yeah, that's fine. Um, I forgot what you brought up, but yeah, it made me think about the victim mindset,
Mm-hmm.
right? The victim mindset that, the bigger problems going on in this world is a greater influence you can offer, but you're still complaining about the same thing you've been complaining about 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Right.
Um, while people are still living through circumstances that they literally have no power to change
Right.
or evolve through. And I always go back to social response and our responsibility, and just the realization that people in positions of power, sometimes they don't know, right? On one level, sometimes they just don't know. Like, I'm too high above the totem pole of life to even be aware
Right.
of what's going on. And the challenge, and I think the challenge is making people care. Like, that's what it is with politics. It's making people care to offer influence to fight for, whatever it matters to you. Um, I think the downside to it, a lot of what we're still stuck in, is still relying on people, still looking at people. When we have these platforms, we have the GoFundMe, we have what is it, Indiegogo, whatever. I mean, GoFundMe mostly,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have these platforms that should be rooted, or change.org. We have these platforms that should be rooted in, uh, on one level, democracy, but just showing that these causes matter. And, here's this petition from 1,000 people who care about this. Like, will you do something about it?
Right.
And if they don't, they're saying fuck them. Like, fuck you. I'll remember this. I remember this when you want something from me in the future. But we don't remember. We don't remember that they don't fuck with us.
Yeah.
And it's just a cycle. And when it's within the black experience, like the part of it that's like really depressing is that it's within the black
Right.
experience, and the narrative and the struggle with the black experience is always thinking that someone else, the victim mindset, someone else will step in, someone else will support. And like, so learning to just say, oh, it needs to be the people influencing and not the other way around.
Right.
um and that's like, how do we get that right?
Yeah.
Because that's just not where we are socially. We're stuck within our own victimhood. Adidas won't cut me a bigger check.
Right.
When
Right.
Gap, I Gap, I
Yeah.
put it in the bag. So what? Even Elizabeth II, like her death, it's being, what's going on in Jackson is being overshadowed by the social response. They're saying Black Twitter, but it's a lot of non-white groups like on the gram celebrating and shit like that.
Even white,
And
honestly. The Irish.
it,
Yeah.
um, and it's, like I mean this is a whole separate conversation.
Mhm.
Like I just think it's corny.
Yeah.
I think it's corny. Because people aren't individualizing it, and you didn't do anything about it. She died of natural causes. So like, why are you happy?
Right.
You didn't do anything you weren't going to. But it's another distraction and pulling people apart, and then the next news cycle like starts on Monday or Tuesday this week, right?
Yeah.
Trump's paper, Steve Bannon arrested. Yeah, get
Yeah,
him.
but
It's
then it's
like,
like the same system that watched him do this dirty shit did nothing while he
right,
was doing the
right,
dirty shit. So now everyone's like, "You're right." They're like, "Yeah, we're finally gonna get him." Like, oh, then what's gonna happen? Is he going to be held accountable? And if so, what does that mean for the people that already have put him on this pedestal of being this voice of middle America or white people, whatever the case is? It's just you like you said, it's so it feels like an empty conversation because what change is going to come from it? And I don't think
right.
any
And
big change is going to come from it.
even, and I'll wrap up on this. There was a former Twitter employee who was going to be a whistleblower, and it was related to the Elon Musk deal of
Hmm.
him backing out on his deal. Now there's legal precedent and all that. He settled with Twitter for $7 million. So whatever wrongdoings Twitter was doing, we'll never know because he settled. He took the check. He sold the fuck out. Right?
Hmm.
He sold the fuck out, and it sets the precedent that now we'll just never know, right? Like no one's coming,
Right.
right? No celebrity, no rich person, no everyday person, no former employee is going to come. At the end of the day, people are going to take a check, they're going to settle, things get wrapped up, and then they'll the ego, I mean, this is totally different. I'm gonna build a foundation and I'm gonna dictate what's right and wrong now instead of putting it out there and letting the public decide.
Right.
And that's just where we are with
Yeah.
everything.
Which sucks.
Any yeah, any final note before we transition into some good grooves?
um no. I'm like, I
All
don't
right,
even know
fair
what else. Like, it's just like you're just like, no, because you kind of feel like, that defeat in it. But I will say that I think that when people try, like people like Kanye, not to even say that he's personally and financially responsible to the people of Jackson, Mississippi to fix their problems, but when someone wants the whole world to fight for him and with him because he feels he's being treated a certain way as a black man, and then to not do that for other people makes me go like, why I oughta. But that's
I like that. Right? You we gave you we supported you through this to give you power to look out for
hmm.
us. Representation matters,
Right.
right? You support people to reach a height where representation matters, and they do nothing with the representation. They just focus on themselves,
Yeah.
um, which
Yeah.
is
That's what money does to you.
I feel like it'll transition into this album too, because it's very telling of where we are.
Yeah.
I Solange's A Seat at the Table. It was released September 30th, 2016, which is a few or 20 days
Hmm.
from now. Um, I mentioned this before. One of my favorite albums of all time. Um, I want to say top 15. I would have to make a real list, and I don't want to just easily say top 10, but it could be like
Hmm.
11 or 12, but definitely within top 15. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful neo soul album. I was talking to some artists that I'm working with, and we were talking about neo soul, and I really like. I never really neo soul was. I like individual soul. Like Maxwell's
Hmm.
Ascension is like, yo, like how, that's a song like you just have to like by default. That's just a beautiful ass song.
Yeah.
Um, when Donald Jones had his hits, my neo soul guy was Music Soul Child. Like Music Soul Child, like
Hmm.
I really vibed out with the way he was sharing like the black experience and talking about love. But overall, it wasn't like my vibe. So hearing this album
Hmm.
and like processing, like, yo, this is neo soul. Like this is beautiful black centered neo soul music. What really connected me with it initially was just the theme about the black experience. I think I initially listened to it. Was it 2016? It came out maybe
Hmm.
2018, maybe 2018. But having it and like I want to say that this album became a good foundation for me for discovering more of myself within a black experience. Like I talk about Fela Kuti a lot,
Hmm.
but I think this album was like the first album where I was like, yo, like be immersed into like the black experience because a lot of it is focused on the African American experience, which is wholly it's innately different than my experience because I'm Haitian American, but born here, I take
Hmm.
on the lived experience of the black experience, and yo, it's track. It's a masterpiece. Like track to track to track.
It is.
There's nothing to skip. There's nothing I don't want to hear. Everything is a vibe. Have you
Yeah.
listened to it before we discussed?
Oh, absolutely. I actually saw Solange in concert. Uh,
Damn,
I went
I'm
to Radio
hating.
City Music Hall. Me and my sister got tickets to see her at Radio City Music Hall after this album dropped. And that performance from beginning to end was incredible. Like the what she does visually matches what she does musically. And she's a phenomenal performer. She's a phenomenal entertainer. And the work she does speaks volumes. And I feel like she did a really good job encompassing her own growth as an artist and then making it, how do you say it, making it, palatable for other black people to listen to it and go, yes, exactly. So
Yeah,
that's definitely what she did with this entire album. But she is a force to be reckoned with, which is a phrase I've been using quite often recently.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. What led to you bringing that back, or maybe just reintroducing it for yourself? Excuse me.
So I posted something because Ruby Bridges' birthday has just passed. She turned 68 years old. She was born in 1954. She integrated at school. People don't realize how close segregation is to us. It is not something that happened 100 years ago. This is recent history, and imagine having that kind of weight on your back as a child to integrate a school. And I was
Right.
like, she's a force to be reckoned with, honestly. And there's just so many people like you. I like your phrasing. It's like within the black experience that have no choice but to be these forces for us. And Ruby Bridges was one of those people. Michael K. Williams was one of those people, and Solange is one of those people. So it's
Right.
definitely a phrase I've been using very, very loosely, and but definitely in a good way to describe just overcoming so much adversity and just being at the top, being at the top of your game. So that's definitely why I keep using that phrase.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
It's a going back to representation matters, right? Like seeing the wind, I can know it was raining today. I can know it's raining, but like if it's just light drops, it don't mean nothing.
Hmm.
But if it's a force of rain, then I gotta prepare. I
Yeah.
learn something from the experience,
Yeah.
and a force of nature is supposed to shake shit up,
Yeah. Shake
and
you.
that's what, like I said, that's what this album, album did for me. Excuse me.
Yeah. Definitely.
Um, so this is Solange's sole project. She has a few features on it,
Hmm.
most notably Lil Wayne on the track "Mad." Sampha, who I've never heard of before. Sampha Sase.
Yeah. Sampha,
Uh,
I feel like gained and garnered a lot of popularity because he was a very recognizable voice when Drake's album "Nothing Was the Same" came out. He's featured a lot on that album, I think.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So maybe I do know him. I just
Yeah.
never really paid attention to the
Hmm.
name. There's the Dream, BJ the Chicago Kid, Q-Tip, Kelly Rowland, Nia Andrews, and
Kalela
Kalela,
and
Kalela,
Andre 3000.
Andre 3000.
Yeah.
Where's Andre 3000 featured on?
He does the chorus for, geez, he does the chorus on one of the songs. Hold on one second.
Oh, I see it. Junie.
Yeah,
Okay,
Junie.
he features uncredited vocals by Andre 3000. Oh yeah, I didn't even notice
Yeah.
that. Um, so most of this album is produced by her with support from Raphael Sadiq, and he's a neo soul artist who I listened
A
to, and I went
legend.
through his album and I was like, wasn't for me, but he has like good individual tracks that I like.
He's a legend.
Um,
He also produced a lot of the music. Well, he didn't produce. He he's the one that did the soundtracks for Insecure. Like he's the one that created pretty much like the playlist, the soundtrack. He's the one that works on the music for the uh, show Insecure. And he also was in Tony, which is he's
right.
been working forever. He's a legend. He's iconic. He is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think I started listening to him maybe like towards the end of the Music Soul Child
Hmm.
phase, and Jay-Z did a feature with him. It's called "Old Girl," and Jay-Z was on a remix, and I was like, I like this. And I kind of vibed out to it, and then that's when I kind of started listening to him a bit more. So the album cover art,
Ah,
how did you describe it? Like, what do you love about it? What do you see when you look at the album cover art?
the the cover art for this album is so good because when you see it, it's just Solange, and she just looks like the Black Mona Lisa. She's got her hair like down, and she's got the curl things in her hair and the clips because it's in a moment of setting it. But I was whenever I see it, I always go like, that's such a good cover. And then I was reading about the cover today, um, and this wasn't supposed to be the cover of the album. It was supposed to be after they took all the clips down, but she wanted to keep it with it in there because she said she was going through a transformation, and that's what this album was for her, a transformation. So she scrapped the idea of doing it with her hair completely done and decided to go with the before pictures rather than the after pictures, which I thought was really great. But it's a beautiful album cover, especially when you think about one of the songs that sticks out the most on the album, which is "Don't Touch My Hair," and it's her in this state
Right.
of her hair being like this, the main focus of it. So I love the album artwork. I think it looks great.
Yeah, I just like I googled the album cover inspiration. Did you think of the Mona Lisa before, or did you see it and then like like make the connection also?
I made the connection before because she kind of looks like it. It's kind of that very neutral kind of face. And
Right,
then it made me think of Jay-Z because he's always I think he referenced the Black Mona Lisa before. Um,
right, right, right,
and then I
right.
was like, then I read it and I saw that she put Black Mona Lisa. I was like, this all makes sense. This makes
That's dope.
sense.
Those aha moments are
They
dope,
really
right?
are.
Like when you get that natural inspiration that the artist use.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've looked at it, plenty of times. I never really made the connection to the Mona
Hmm.
Lisa. I just kind of saw her as is, and it's dope to see that it's inspired by the Mona
Yeah.
Lisa. Um, my I defined it as two words: just natural beauty.
Hmm.
There's this raw, appreciative, natural beauty. It looks like you could assume she's nude, right? Or it's
Hmm.
topless, and nudity is natural beauty, and her curls just feel like very big and lively, like they feel like they're
Yeah.
dominating the photo and her presence. And the clips are just like these random placements to kind of contain them and control
Yeah.
them. No facial expression, just it's just beautiful. I really, and then, like the bottom, right? You see like the waves, the curls at the
Hmm.
top, and at the bottom, it just feels like heavy and thick and
Yeah.
matted. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I never really like dig deep
Hmm.
into it until I looked at it for this week, but it's a beautiful transition. I'm glad to realize that Mona Lisa
Hmm.
inspired, but I feel that its simplicity makes it better than the Mona
Yeah,
Lisa. Fuck
definitely.
the Mona Lisa.
Definitely. It's one of those things where you're really looking at it like, and I think it's so purposely open for interpretation to take however you want it to take it. But yeah, like you said, it's just like this like natural beauty, like a very stripped down version of an artist. And just and then reading about it and realizing like she picked it because it symbolized for her her transformation, um, when it comes to her music and her art. It's just it's very well done, very well done.
Right, right. Um, so this album came out in 2016. It's something, but it was something that she'd been working on for mad
Mad long.
long. I think it's began in 2013. Why did I miss the page? There we go. Excuse me.
I like.
Yeah. So writing for an album began as early as 2008, with the recording sessions took place from 2013 to 2016. And initially, it's thinking about the length of dedication to kind of craft, what I've defined and you agree as a masterpiece, right? Like good work takes a lot of um, patience, like to really find the experience to go through the phases of life. Her mentioning that the album is about transformation. You can transform in a year, but it won't be as grand or as clear as transforming over like a three
Right.
year period where you're actively like living it, like living the moments of awareness and growth, which I think are dope. I think it said that she wrote Cranes in the Sky initially in like
Mm-hmm.
2008, and it's just something that she kind of put in the back burner. Raphael Sadiq gave her a CD with instrumentals, and she just kind of revisited Cranes in the Sky, and it's self-titled project. Excuse me, hold on to that. Forget that. Sorry. Yeah. 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 That's all I had. And did you find anything interesting about the significance of the time when it first started?
Yeah, because I think I looked a lot on Wikipedia and just read some interviews she did, but I know she definitely because I'm quoting Wikipedia right now when she talks about it's a project on identity, empowerment, independence, grief, and healing, and it's all in terms of just being black in America. I think she was also influenced by what was happening in Ferguson, um, and I think in Baltimore as well. But she definitely, yeah, that's all I got to about that. But she definitely was like making this as a form of, I feel like, therapy, because expressing
Right.
yourself in a creative way is always very therapeutic, you know?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the like top albums, rap hip hop albums that came out around 2013, just to kind of see like where the pulse of the the social
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And this is Drake, Nothing Was the Same, Kanye, Yeezus, Chance the Rapper, Acid Rap, J. Cole, Born Sinner, Jay Z, Magna Carta, Holy Grail. And just thinking about just like the experience of seeing what's trending and what's relevant
Mm-hmm.
in that time versus what's really going on in real life, like we talked earlier about, Kanye versus not versus Kanye's experience versus the people of Jackson, Mississippi, and their
Right.
experience, right? What's being pushed to the forefront for society to enjoy and consume, and what's really going on? You brought up Ferguson, and just the realization that times haven't changed, and we hear it throughout a lot of the
Right.
project. At least for me, like when I listen to every track and everything, anything that involves the limits of the black experience, the trauma of the black experience. It's like, yeah, that's what last week, right? Like it
Yeah.
just happened. Um, it's it's it's
It's
heavy,
very
like we
heavy.
said. So how did you feel about the first track, the intro to this project,
Oh, with
Rise?
Master P? Or the
Not the song Rise.
uh
I think the Glory Is in You is the third one, third interlude. Yeah,
Rise. I don't it's not my favorite song on it, but I think it's a very good opening to this album. It sets the tone, especially to let you know what to expect going forward, which is just a lot of releasing of sadness and grief and healing. It's just a pretty much like a very good opening. But I think I didn't listen to that one as often as I listened to everything else because I was like listening to a lot towards the middle to see kind of like if there was a theme of it.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was just a really good opening. It's very repetitive too because it's just, setting the tone for everything. But what did you think of it?
Comparing it to Scales, what stands out to you in terms of like the presentation or the language and the artistry, if anything?
Scales, I thought Scales was really cool because she uses a lot of words to kind of just what I want to tell you my favorite part of the song first. Hold on one second. I just want to pull up the
Okay.
lyric for that. When she ends and does the chorus when she says candy red things gonna spin with that big body, boy you're bound to win, and that armor in your mouth you're gonna shine. It just takes the experience of one specific person in a neighborhood, like specifically a black man in a small, like not a small neighborhood but like a small city, and kind of gives that feeling of what's important to you. Is wealth the thing that's important to you? Is your reputation the thing that's important to you? Do you think what you're doing is good? Do you think what you're doing is bad? Is that subjective? So kind of just giving that experience
Right.
of like, what do you think of this person, but just giving like a snippet. He has all this respect from people, but some people might think he's just a thug. But all of that is open to interpretation because you don't know people's circumstances. Yeah.
Right. 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 Yeah. So Rise for me, similar to you, it's not really one of my favorite tracks because of the repetition, but I love
Mm-hmm.
the lyricism, and for me, it like you said, it sets the tone for this. You brought up that this album is about growth. So Rise to me is about rebirth, right? Like accept self acceptance, fall into your ways and crumble. Like yo, just
Right.
be who you are. Fall in your way so you can sleep at night. Accept who you are so you can just rest.
Yeah.
Rest, right? Just get some rest. Like rethink about it. It's all right. Like you don't have to hate yourself. It's all right. It's all right. Accept certain
Right.
parts of yourself. And then fall in your way so you can wake up and rise, right? You can't grow into a better version of yourself if you haven't accepted who
Yeah.
you are in the present. So there's a level of surrendering. There's a level of self surrendering to just who you are, what your limits are, and just knowing that well, I tried today. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm
Right.
gonna do better, and I'm a literally, figuratively, I'm gonna rise, but literally, I'm gonna
Yeah.
rise also. But maybe I should have been the other way
Yeah.
around.
But also the thing about you, like you said, crumble into your ways. You can't be the person you are without rest either. Because she also makes
Right,
sure that, because that's another ongoing theme in this album, especially, is self care and like kind of making sure you're okay in order to do what you need to do. Um, the whole album to me, because I wrote down a quote, and I'm sure maybe you've heard this quote before from James Baldwin when he says, "To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time." And that's what I got from
right,
this album, is that even though she, it's sad and it's beautiful at the same time, you still have to find rest. You still have to find time for yourself, because if you don't, you'll just be miserable. And I feel like that's something this album does, is speak to me, because sometimes I worry so much about everything that's going on, whether it be in my life or in my friends' lives or just the world in general, or like I said, people in Jackson, or what's happening everywhere else on the planet. You see all these injustices and you get so worked up and so sad, and sometimes it's so hard to like get going and be positive. But if you don't allow
right.
yourself time to decompress, you'll be like James Baldwin said, you're always in this state of rage, and you have to give your brain a break, because if you don't, you'll have a nervous breakdown. Yeah.
Right, right, right. And and rest is
Yeah.
also layered too, right? Rest is the physical rest, but just a rest from the chaos of it, right? Escape, like withdraw from it all, right? And part of crumbling to yourself is just you withdrawing from the external and
Mm-hmm.
what it's doing to you. And it so like the language within Rise, I feel like it kind of relates to what you were saying
Hmm.
about scales, you know, and that's kind of the same. I had the same idea. It's the non it's the stereotypical black person, right? That or the black type of black person that gets portrayed most of the time, right? Like you said, it could be a thug, right? She talked about the streets say you're a king, you have all this notoriety, um, that almond in your mouth, you
Yeah.
got the gold caps, and they think you're this specific
Right.
type of person. But for me, scales is about the self acceptance, right? Like, yo, I dress how I dress, I style myself how I want to. People know me as they know me, and I still exist and live
Right.
within myself. Um, it's for me. It's also about like the social influence. And if your boys go down, I'll never tell you're a superstar. You're a
Right.
superstar. Your love is kind, but your love ain't blind. Your world is kind, but your world ain't blind. And regardless of who you present yourself as, right? The representation, there's a social responsibility behind it because although you're just genuinely being yourself, like this is just who I am, it's what I do, it's what I wear, it's what I dress, the world isn't gonna innately just accept you off of that, right? Like the world, so your love ain't blind, right? Other people see it, and you have to adjust that based on your social actions. Your world ain't blind. Other people live in your world too, so you have a
Yeah.
social responsibility to kind of balance that out, and that's the challenge. But through and through, you still represent yourself and be who you need to be.
Right. There's another lyric I wanted to bring up really fast. Well, the verse where she just says, like she said, the street says you're a king, the world says you're a failure, and your mother's a queen. But damn, she always tells you you're gonna end up like your daddy. But damn, that nigga fresh. Like,
Right? That's black, right? That's
yeah.
black, right?
And then he
That's
goes
black.
on to say, she goes on to say, you say, look on the TV, they all want to be me for nothing. Whatever it's worth, it's something because that's another thing when you kind of think about it, like look on the TV, they want to look just like me. It's cultural appropriation because when you even think about that aspect of it, Black people can be their authentic selves, and whether that be wearing gold teeth or not, perming your hair or not, braiding your hair or not, or wearing your hair as an afro, someone else is going to take that, appropriate it, and when it gets rough, if it gets tough, they can take that off and they can move on because that's always seen as a phase that sometimes young white people go through before finding themselves. But for a lot of Black people that do subscribe to that, whether it be having gold teeth or just being somebody that stayed in the same hood you grew up in, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. But how is it fair that someone can go on TV and do what you do and not be looked at the same way? It's sort of unfair. So it's like this guy living in his small world and feeling like this big person, but in the same breath, seeing people kind of like get the praise that he's never gotten for carrying himself the way that he does. So she speaks a lot about that, the cultural appropriation aspect of how Black people, our culture is for everyone, but it doesn't get any respect. And a lot of people, and I've heard it said, not to my face because I don't deal with people like that, but they'll say like African Americans don't have a culture. And that's always been so crazy to me because Black people have been in this country for so long and we've shaped so much of the music, the culture itself, the food, everything. And it just kind of gets brushed under the rug. But then people not a part of our community utilize it and profit from it and tell you it's not a big deal. And it's like, yes, it is. Like, this
Right,
is what we have. That's the culture is important to every group. Irish people have a culture, British people have a culture, Black Americans have a culture, everyone has a culture. So to kind of like push Black culture to the side, especially when it comes to Black Americans, is always kind of like piss me off. And I feel like she does a good job of kind of describing how that can be infuriating, you know, but say it in such a way that it's like, but we're still beautiful. That doesn't mean we shouldn't still stand in who we are. So Yeah.
So so as a Haitian American, there like I said, there is an innate removed experience
Mhm.
and a removed sometimes like realization. I think growing up, I've said that, like, yeah, or not. I've said it. I don't necessarily wholeheartedly believe it.
Mhm.
The realization with, going through thinking about the inspiration from African American and cultural ex- artists,
Mhm.
the challenge of the African American experience specifically, it feels like you don't African Americans don't own their culture, because of, like, on one end, like you said, appropriation, but I think there's also appropriation within blackness within itself. And I was thinking about, we use the example from Scales of, we use the word thug essentially, right? Thug became part of like pop culture, and I think there's like appropriation within thug also. The demeanor, the aura of what hip hop offers, right? It's like of being a thug, of being hard. And a lot of rappers, I think rap has become a form of like cultural appropriation from this subsect of the black experience, and becomes utilized as the dominant representation of
Mhm.
the black experience. It feels like there's a it feels like it's hard to go back, right? Because there isn't a staple. There isn't like, yo, like this is sometimes it feels like there isn't a, yo, this is what we own. And I think the challenge is that the history of like why it feels like that, of the appropriation, and at times not knowing the truth of history, right? Like a lot of the African American history and experience is still being unraveled at times,
Mhm.
right? I think we're getting closer to a point where people are like really embodying and respecting the roots and the history and the efforts within African American experience, because so much of the history has been the oppression, the trauma, right? It's Jim Crow, slavery, civil rights. So many of the themes are focused on the oppression and negativity. But like having the information of the success and the triumphs, plug Black Excellence Calendar, like
Mhm.
just trying to show, like, yo, there's more out there. I
Yeah.
think that hope that I think that's gradually kind of taken away that ignorant mindset of African Americans don't have culture. I think there's progress being made.
I also feel like that's on purpose though. When
Yeah,
you
yeah,
look at who,
absolutely.
yeah, like when you look at who controls the narrative, a lot of the times black people, black Americans aren't in control of the narrative because we're not allowed to be. Because if you can profit off of us, you don't need our voices really. You just need, you know, our culture. And I feel like a lot of the times I see conversations where black people say we got to gatekeep. And it's funny, but it's true because when we don't
Yeah,
have somebody to kind of protect what it is that we've gone through as a people, when we don't have somebody, when we don't have people to kind of say, hey, I'm black, I'm gonna put somebody else black on that is good as well. And, and we kind of like keep selling parts of our culture off because it's money over everything a lot of the time. Um, you're right. There's like like a reckoning happening right now where there's a lot of reclamation of everything. Like look at the words that have been used against black people for generations, whether it be thug and ghetto and ratchet and all and stuff like that. And then we reclaim those words, kind of change the definition, and kind of throw a little bit of pride on it. Like, yeah, okay, I'm ghetto fabulous then. And it doesn't
right, right,
mean that
right,
what we've done is not beautiful, because it is, because we've like we've built our culture on foreign land, under oppression, under hatred, under genocide, under white supremacy, and this is what we got. And then those same people took it and said, all right, well, let's just kind of like spread it out and give it to everybody. And sometimes black people look at that as success, like, oh, that's cool because now we have other people interested in rap music and R&B, but then don't realize because those things are now popular, the face on it doesn't have to be black. It can be
right, right,
anything
right.
but black. So it's definitely, you're right. That's definitely, I've seen more conversations happening around it where it's like, hey, how come this white person gets to do this thing that black people have been doing and get to be on the top of it? And everyone's like, whoa, 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 why'd you have to bring up race? Those conversations are going to happen regardless of you, like race. It it's the it's the elephant in the room. Like it's always there.
Right.
Just because you guard your eyes and pretend it's not there, just because even if you don't intentionally, talk about, oh, that person over there is black or that person over there is this, those things still exist. It's not existing because you don't talk about it, but people want to sweep it, under the rug and say like we're all one human race, which is true, but we cannot act like these divides don't exist because we've
Right.
built the whole entire structure of the world based on those divides. So,
Right. Right. Right.
but the reclamation, you're right. Like I see it a lot more. I see a lot more people defending blackness, defending black people, defending black history, the importance of it. And with that comes the people that are very opposed to it. So those voices are also becoming louder. But I feel like it's a fight you're always going to have to fight, especially as a black person in this country.
So just to transition
Mm-hmm.
back, I don't. Are you? Did you hear about this virtual AI rapper named FN Mecca?
Oh, I did.
Oh yeah. So Capitol Records signed and created this AI rapper, but they dropped him. I don't know how to describe an AI, but they described it. Um, yeah, they dropped it after like media backlash, which it's it sets the precedent, right? Like it's a possibility someone did it, and they're just gonna find another way to do it. Maybe they just won't tell you,
Yeah.
right? Like you look at the real quick, like the gorillas. You don't really see
Mm-hmm.
them. They're just generated cartoons,
Right.
and it works.
But it's real people behind
So
it.
Trent, yeah, 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 yeah. But we won't know that because we anything could be real nowadays,
Yeah.
right? Deep fake, anything could be real. Like you don't know, right? You don't know. We don't know. Fuck. So two standout
Mm-hmm.
tracks. I feel this kind of ties in with what we've been talking about, like the what did you say? The
Reclamation.
reclamation, the Black Renaissance. Something I've kind of been
Mm-hmm.
saying for the past 2 years. Um, two standout tracks. One for me is kind of Mad. I like Mad because I like the language in
Yeah.
it, but I want to save Mad for lines that stood out because
Mm-hmm.
I like there's more to it. Don't Wish Me Well is one of my favorite tracks. I love the futuristic feel from
Mm-hmm.
it, and it's just a sexy ass song. I'm going. It's just it feels very sexy. I know it may not necessarily be in relation to like a relationship, but innately the language takes me there. I went away this concrete, don't have love for me. I took a day, too much talk and not much to see. I know you always speak on something, so I'll leave on the mic for you. And I'm going all the way, but I'll leave on the lights for you. I'm going all the way, and now you're almost out of view. And it's innately right. The initial part is thinking about love, but sticking with the theme of
Mm-hmm.
rebirth is talking to your past self,
Right.
right? Past self, but also anyone in your life who's still stuck on like the past, the limits, things that are holding you back, right? I'm doing my work. I'm leaving a foundation so I can move forward with my
Right.
life. I'm here, like you'll see my light. You'll see my light. You'll see my work. And if you want me, if you want to still be present and relevant in my life, then you'll do the work to follow that trail to the light to get where I am. But if you're not there now, then I'm alright because I'm doing more important
Mm-hmm.
things. Um, Second favorite song is Junie, just because for me it's a party song. It's a party song where you just there's not step like it's a fun upbeat song. It actually makes me think of this one Valentine's one Valentine's
Uh-huh.
Day in 2000 and maybe eight or between 2009 probably. Me and one of my coworkers, we didn't have any plans. We both dating girls or women that worked with us. And like, yo, you got anything planned? He's like, nah, I ain't got nothing planned either. So one of our boys was a bouncer. He always had connections at restaurant. We like, yo, Ed, yo, we need a spot to do a double date tonight. He sends us this location. It's like I don't remember the name of the place. I don't remember the cross streets. It's in the 20s, and I think it's between like Fifth and Sixth. We walk in, and it's just this like low red light themed spot. It's a restaurant. Black people, like every, I think majority of people there were black. My date was black. My friends, he was dating a Puerto Rican girl at the time. But yo, just so majority this black place. They're playing neo soul music, and it was just like a fun ass date that we just kind of came up with
Yeah.
last minute. And at some point, music started coming on. Like someone cleared out the table, and this couple just started dancing. And that's what Junie reminds me of. Reminds me of like being in that space of being in like this sacred, holy otherworld experience where blackness exists within like the 20s, with predominantly a white neighborhood, and just feeling free and like dancing and having
Yeah.
fun. And Junie is just that vibe for me. Junie just feels like that vibe, and knowing that people who are dancing and vibing with that type of song, like if it's a shared black
Hmm.
experience. Um, what about you? What two tracks stood out to you?
I wanted to tell you about Junie, that song was inspired by Junie Morrison of the Ohio Players. Um, so that's why that song is called Junie. But the two songs that really stand out to me, it's always going to be "Don't Touch My Hair" because I feel like it's just such a good song because it really does explain not just the plight of hair, but just
I
being
like
a
that, the
black woman
plight
in
of hair.
general.
That's real.
It is the
That's real
plight of
shit.
hair. It is because when you think about it, like look at all the crown acts they had to put in place because black people were being reprimanded at their jobs for their hair, fired for their hair, and it was legal to do such a thing. And even like this album itself was recorded mostly in Iberia, New Orleans, where I think it's like the 1930s, maybe even before that. Like black women weren't even allowed to have their hair uncovered. They had to wear scarves on their heads to not see their hair. It's just a lot of how policed black hair is in general by everyone, by black men, by black women, by white people in general. Like there's been times when I worked at Barnes and Noble, I had a black manager one time tell me because I had my hair like in an afro, like, "Oh, are you having a bad hair day?" And I'm like, what would make you
Nigga.
feel so comfortable, right? Why would you
Right.
feel so comfortable to even say that to me? And then you even hear people have hair preferences on their partners, especially when it comes to, like, I've heard men say, "Oh, I don't want to date a woman with dreadlocks," and it's like, why? What does the hair preference have? What does that do for you? What does it not do
Right.
for you? Or men that say they only want to date girls that have 3A curl patterns or 3B curl patterns. If you have coarser hair, thicker hair, kinkier hair, that's not something that they're interested in. So they police how natural hair looks. Then it's the guys that'll make fun of women that have weaves, but want girls that have permed hair or straightened hair. And it's just like the policing of hair to the point where at my age, at 35 years old, I still know people that are going through the transition of accepting their natural hair for what it is because you get so much pressure from a young age to perm your hair and to have it straightened and to have it be presentable. Like when I got my hair perm for the first time when I was 5, 6 years old, and thought that was just what I was supposed to do, and didn't
Right.
stop
Right.
doing it until I was like in my 20s, when I was just kind of like, why am I doing this? I don't even like
Right.
doing this. The process itself is terrifying, and you put in this shit on your head, and it burns, Clifford. Like it burns, and it's like I don't want to do this anymore. If someone else wants to do it, that's fine, but it's just like, and then you see, women that aren't black now adopting these black hairstyles on their heads, and you're just like, wow, they took no time at all for people to accept this on someone else's head. But when it was my goddamn head, it was, that's unprofessional, that's ghetto,
Right.
that's
Right.
this. And I've even had people like literally just put their hand up to my head like, oh, your hair, don't touch me. Why did you feel like that was okay? So it speaks so much to how many so many black women feel about their hair, because you have to, it's like such a unique experience to black women too, because you have to learn to love your hair, because everyone has been telling you that you shouldn't. The entire time it's been growing on the top of your head that you shouldn't like it, you shouldn't, you just can't, no, it's not right. So that's always been one of my favorite songs, because it just goes to show you how for a long time a lot of black women have had a love hate relationship with their hair. Because even imagine that some of this could even be summed up to explain like how people reacted to seeing Blue Ivy as a baby walking around with her little afro, and people like, she needs to do something about that baby's head, this and that. And it's like, that is a goddamn child. You're policing a child's head, you're policing her hair. And now that she's older and it's a bit longer, and they found like a curl regimen for her, and it's like, oh, Blue Ivy looks so pretty now. Like, she's always
Right,
been a
right.
beautiful child, but now because her hair is longer and she's got like a better curl pattern, we feel differently about it. Like, it's shameful, but it's also like a lot of learning that goes with it. So definitely Don't Touch My Hair is one of them. But
Just real quick,
mhm,
you know, thinking about cultural appropriation, other
mhm,
side of it, right? Like if it isn't under the guise of the white standard,
mhm.
right? If you don't appropriate white culture with straightening your hair and doing everything, then it's an issue also, and seeing that within the black experience also.
What do you mean?
So the a lot a lot of the divide within like the black experience is the for me, I view it as like chasing whiteness, right? Like
Mhm,
hair straightening is founded on whiteness,
mhm,
coloring hair and all of that. So we use the example of Blue Ivy, like they need to do something about her hair,
mhm,
or people having an issue with curly hair, afro hair.
mhm.
Sometimes the people who straighten their hair, who do perms, whose own actions are a form of cultural appropriation from whiteness. So like kind of fall under the guise of whiteness, I feel.
Cultural. I mean, like straight hair is not just a white thing, but also I know that a lot of black women straighten their hair because that's what they've learned, that's what they know. But even manipulating your hair to be straight, I don't think is cultural appropriation in a sense, because there are black people that have straight hair, whether they're mixed race or just black in general. Not speaking for me, because that's, my hair is just not straight as an
Right.
afro, but they like exist. I feel like sometimes with things like cultural appropriation, um, it holds certain different, it holds a different weight. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of the times we hear, well, isn't it cultural appropriation if black people straighten their hair? And it's like, no, that's not really it, because it doesn't hold the same weight. It's not, it's more acceptable. It's more fitting in. It's more being taken seriously. I've always been
Right, but
taken
that
more serious because of my hair, and we shouldn't subscribe to whiteness at all. I don't think we should, but sometimes you literally have no choice. When I have job interviews, or I've had job interviews in the past, I'm like, all right, what's the best way to do my hair so it's like as neutral as possible, because you don't want to have to deal with that extra layer of racism or policing or whatever the case is. So I don't know. I think it doesn't hold the same kind of weight. Um,
I understand that it's not about the weight.
mm-hmm,
I think it's just literally what it is. It's like using your example, right? Sometimes you're going to a certain space.
mm-hmm,
What's the most cultural accepting thing I can do?
right.
Sometimes it's straightening your hair. Sometimes it's wearing a suit and tie. Sometimes it's taking the earrings out of your ear.
Yeah,
Like that's still cultural appropriation within itself. I understand the weight is different, but I
yeah,
still think if the and this is tied into the argument, not argument, conversation about authenticity. If the goal is to push who I am, and the goal is to be authentic, then I shouldn't appropriate in these smaller circumstances just to be accepted, because it I understand the purpose,
yeah,
right? You need a job, right? I need a job.
yeah,
I need this bank, whatever. But still doing it, I think it plays in favor of the game.
right.
Um, and the challenge is finding a way around it essentially. But
Yeah.
yeah, not saying they're on the same level,
Yeah.
but it's to me it's still cultural appropriation.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you on it being cultural appropriation because American culture is also like black people are also a part of American culture. But if those things didn't exist, like if racism didn't exist and colorism and texturism and those things didn't exist, then we would be more free to live as we want to without realizing that um, the way we're being viewed by a system is directly going to affect our livelihood, then it would be different. But because we live within a system that looks down on all things black, it's almost hard not to because of survival, because of because you need to be able to move in certain spaces to thrive. So I get what you're saying, but I feel like it's a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your second song?
My second one is Fubu, which is Forest by Us. Um,
That's my least favorite song.
really?
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it didn't do anything for me that
I
much.
liked it. I
Go
liked
ahead.
it a lot. I think my favorite line from that song was "Don't feel bad if you can't sing along. Just be glad you got the whole wide world. This shit is from us. Some shit you can't touch." So it's one of those things, which is really funny too, because like I said, I saw her at Radio City Music Hall in like 2016 or 2017. It was around that time, and she's performing these songs, and they're very like pro black, and like everyone there is just kind of like vibing with it. But then you can also kind of see her sing these lyrics and like a kind of like change in how people were taking it, watching it. Like me and my sister there, and everyone's like dancing, and then you see like a few white people, and they're kind of like listening, and they're can't tell if they like it or they don't know what to do because they're just kind of like,
Right.
is she mad at us? Is she mad? And it's like less about being mad and just literally explain to you this is how it is. Thank you for coming to my show, but this music is for specific, people. She's not going to exclude people from, the experience of seeing her perform live because why would she do that? But it's like, hey, by the way, this song is specifically for this this demographic. It was like the same thing
Right.
I feel like with Brown Skin Girl when Beyonce did Brown Skin Girl and she was specifically talking about brown skin women and dark skin women and people didn't like that because they still felt like they wanted to be included in it. Um,
Right. Right. Right.
but yeah, this song spoke to me because it's not like not everything is supposed to be for everyone. Sometimes it's just for us. So that's why I really liked Fubo because it also was just a shout out to the clothing line, which is also really cool. So,
Right. So standout lines. It was interesting kind of finding
mm-hmm.
bars. Like, granted, we talked about a few lyrics from songs that we like, and I think traditionally, like the mindset is like bars and rap
Right.
bars. But Solange has
Hell
bars. Like she
yeah.
has, if you want to like poetry bars, like she
Yep.
has bars. Um, what's what stood out to me is like a lot of the interludes, like with Master P. Let me get the exact right one.
The interludes are incredible. The whole album.
I got so much magic. They're fun. Shit. No, that's not it. Well, I'll start with
Mm-hmm.
Mad. I like Mad because it kind of ties into. I feel like it ties into Scales, right? Talking about this perceived thug, Lil Wayne's rapping about. I walk into the bank with my pants sagging and people hating on me and all of that. And like you're mad, right? You're mad that I'm existing on under my terms, right? And like tying back to what I was saying about cultural
Mm-hmm.
appropriation and being authentic, right? No matter what, right? I'm wearing my baggy jeans. I'm gonna wear whatever I want when I want. I'm gonna show up how I want authentically and be myself. And that's the goal to be able to chase. That's the dream of like utopia.
Mm-hmm.
I like I really like Solange's kind of going back and forth, but I like the last part of that song of Mad a lot. I ran to this girl. I said I'm tired of explaining. Man, this shit is dreaming, but I'm not really allowed to be mad. And for me, that it kind of signifies where we are culturally within the Black
Hmm.
experience, right? I'm tired of explaining. I'm tired of talking about. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. And the for me, the counter side of being tired is not advocating,
Hmm.
right? You like if you're too tired to do the work, then other people will do it for you. Other people are going to represent you. Other people are going to speak for you. You always have to be mad. You always have to be
Yeah.
mad. Um, I wanted to ask you: do you feel yourself still mad about the Black experience?
Yeah. I'm constantly
Okay,
I'm constantly mad because like I told you, everything's so heavy, and when you start to really think about a lot of shit, whether it happened 400 years ago, it still affects what's happening right now. Like, it's kind of in a system that doesn't really work for the majority of black people, for the majority of poor people. And you can't, you're like trying to figure out, like, how do you break this cycle? How do we get out of this cycle? And it has to do a lot with, working as a community, and not just like the black community, but just like the poor working class, people of color just in general. And it's like you just so tired, and it's like you said, like this, it's like you're so tired of being mad, but then that's how they keep you from, doing anything about it, because you have to go to work, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have so many responsibilities to yourself, to your family, to your significant other, to have health insurance, to put food on your table. So it
right,
speaks to you in a sense where, like, you're like, this shit's not fair. And every once in a while I'll read something was like, we're not supposed to be doing this shit, we're not supposed to be working at a desk from 9 to 5, we're supposed to be sitting on the damn beach, drinking out of a goddamn coconut, or whatever the case is. And you really just got to save that for when you have your 2 weeks vacation time that you saved up from working a job for however long. So it is in general just infuriating. So that's why you have to listen to an ode to self-care, or borderline, because if you don't,
right,
you'll
right, right,
literally just be sitting on your couch frazzled every day trying to figure out why the system doesn't work in your favor. And then you remember, oh yeah, it's designed like that. So yeah, definitely that James Baldwin quote, I want to get that tattooed on my forehead sometimes, because that's just really how I feel like the majority of the
right.
time. It's tough. It's tough.
It's draining being Black, right?
It definitely is.
um, I want to. I have one more line that I like, but I'll let you
Hmm.
do one or two. I have any of yours first. Just kind of
Okay.
go back and forth. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were going first. My bad.
Oh, no, no,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
So I wanted to talk about the interlude that they do, because um, Solange has an interlude from her father, Matthew Knowles, and then one from Tina, who I think goes by Tina Lawson now because she was remarried. But hers is so good because she says,
What's the name of
it's
them?
such
Just
a
to
beauty.
clarify.
Oh, okay. The interlude that I'm talking about is Tina Taught Me.
Okay.
That's track 8. She says, um, it's such a beauty in black people, and it really saddens me when we're not allowed to express that pride in being black, and that if you do, then it's considered anti-white. No, you're just pro-black, and that's okay. The two don't go together. Because you celebrated black culture does not mean that you don't like white culture, or that you're putting it down. It's just taking pride in it. But what's irritating is when somebody says, you know they're racist, that's reverse racism, or they have a Black History Month but we don't have a White History Month. And then she just goes on to talk about how we've always been taught white history. We've always been taught those things, and learning about black, anything else is always othered. It's always like outside of the curriculum for learning. So it's just one of those things that I just feel it's just cool to hear about, because there's so much involvement, from different people of different walks of life on this album that are black. It's her mom, it's her dad who was the first to integrate a school. It's Master P. It's just a lot of different people from different walks of life having this shared experience. And it's just beautiful to hear her mom be like, she's always taught, probably always taught her kids to, you're black. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, and you can be proud of being black. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or it's anti anybody else.
Right.
It's just a pride in yourself. It's a part of who you are. So I definitely love Tina's interlude because it's just very reassuring.
I like that. That's a good word, reassuring.
Yeah.
I like that.
Hmm.
And the second one was Dad was mad, which is an interlude to Mad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that speaks about just integration and dealing with segregation and racism and wherever you go they left. I don't know if you how much of the backstory you know about her grandparents living in Louisiana, and then they worked in a salt. Her grandfather worked in a salt mine. Do you know this?
No, I don't.
So her grandfather worked in a salt man in a salt mine in Iberia, Louisiana, because that's where her family is originally from. And then at some point, this salt mine collapsed, and her grandfather, I think he was trapped in it, or someone was trapped in it. And when they told the salt mine, whoever owned it, like, "Hey, our people are trapped down there," they were just pretty much like, "Figure it out." Or leave it alone. Like we don't have the money to spend on getting them out. And then these people got together that worked at the salt mine and they dug out two survivors, and they ended up firing a bunch of people that worked for this salt mine because they were like, "We told you not to do this."
Right, right, right.
And when they tried to, I think they hired back part of the staff that they had fired, and they tried to unionize, and they pretty much ran her grandfather and her grandmother out of town, and they relocated to Galveston, Texas because of it. And it's just kind of like, what? And it's just still constantly happening to this day. But it was just a very interesting story to see that, like, generations of people having to deal with racism within the same family. And like that's her upbringing, that's her foundation. So of course she's going to be very pro-black and speak for her experience and speak for her family, and try and make them proud with this album. um but yeah, that salt mine, you should look it up and read about it, because I think she interviewed both her parents like very extensively to have them involved in this album. And like this, a lot of the stories that they shared, she I don't think she knew them fully, and then found out about it pretty much after she recorded the album, and then included them as interludes. But yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the generational trauma, right, is never too far removed, and
Right.
sometimes it's still the lived reality of what the
Yeah.
Black experience is going through.
Right.
When I was listening, I talked about Mad and the language of Mad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I looked at the title for the interlude with her dad was mad. I was wondering
Mm-hmm.
why it wasn't Dad is mad. Like, we talked about you're still mad. I'm still mad, and I'm
Yeah.
just like little things, right? Like dad should still be mad, right? It shouldn't be
Yeah.
past tense. Dad should still be mad, but his daughters, his family, they're doing better, so he's not as mad, right? He's
Right.
there's a like I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get
Yeah.
it.
I'm sure to him, like, we've made a lot of progress because you're not really worrying so much about people integrating schools. So maybe like he was like, we overcame that specifically. So maybe that's why, or maybe was sounds better than is.
Yeah, I mean I think it sounds better. Like this is just me like overthinking, right? Like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
overthinking it and being meticulous to detail because disconnecting it to like where we are in the present.
Mm-hmm.
The other line that it's just interesting that we both chose the interlude lines versus like line
Yeah.
from the lyrics, and it shows you like the power, I think, of the album and the full scope of
As a
like
whole.
having additional people in it and not just making about her sharing her story. It's with
Right.
Master P. Like Master P is in about three interludes, I believe, but this one is the For Us by Us interlude, and he goes,
Mm-hmm.
"They offered me $1 million deal, and had the check ready. Said I wouldn't be able to use my name. I was fighting my brother because he's like, man, you should have took the dollars. I said, no, what do you think I'm worth? If a white man offered me $1 million, I gotta be worth 40, 50, or 10 or something.
Yeah.
And it's the real is this is in the Black Excellence quote. I use Master P and I use that quote in the Black Excellence calendar journal bundle, plug. Um, it's the realization of like selling out, right? Knowing that
Mhm.
you have more long-term value um as an artist, as an individual, when you don't conform to the standard, the check, right? You don't let someone else dictate your value. Um I was thinking about, artists using their like for this album, she created her own record label. I think it's let me get the name.
Saint Heron.
Yeah, yeah. She created her own record label, and a lot of music, a lot of artists in general get screwed over because they don't handle the business side of things, right? Like as an
Right.
artist, building having an official business that owns your rights and names like should be the standard because you own it, like no one else has ownership over it. And it's a game, right? It's free game on honoring yourself, being authentic, and knowing that you have more value than anyone will ever really assign to you. um
Right.
why I chose this album, everything we discussed, this it's interesting how artistry and music comes into your life, or this art in general
Mhm.
comes into your life and inspires you. um I'm not sure why, right? Like I've never listened. We talked about this with music when I said I don't really listen to the female rap, because
Mhm.
I like most of the older generation's content. Um, I don't really listen to female American artists because a lot of the mainstream push is just over sexualization. And like I want soul in music, especially when it comes from female artists. Um, so like I like Corinne Bay Ray or Rayleigh Bay, Corinne Bay Rayleigh. That's kind of like the vibe I got from this project.
Mhm.
But it comes into your life, you find it, and it just leads you down this path and finding inspiration and appreciating and like rethinking your individuality within the experience, my individuality within the Black experience, and just finding the appreciation for the artistry and the potential of where am I in this place, right? Like dad was mad, right? Am I still mad? Should I still be mad? Answer is yeah, because I haven't done enough, right? I think once you've like really done enough, when you look back at your past and say, yo, I put in some work, I'm not that mad anymore. I'm
Mhm.
good. I'm not that mad anymore. Um, and I think that's like part of the foundation of the Black experience still is, and presently, like yeah, presently still is, right? Like I feel like people aren't mad as they should be, and if they are mad, they're mad about the wrong things. We talked about uh, media focus, right? Mad
Mhm.
about Adidas and brands versus being like really mad about the people suffering. Um, the Black experience feels very cyclical. It it feels like it's just kind of stuck at times. There's relative growth, right? Like there's just a conscious awareness growth. If you're growing as an individual, then the awareness of seeing and connecting with other people is like, hey, other people are growing too. Things are getting better. But the overall experience still feels like the themes of this album. Um,
Mhm.
and does it ever get 100% better? No. Like what's the percentage you're willing to live with of like things getting better, and
Right.
that's for each of us to decide. But knowing that, I put in the work,
Mhm.
I'm not mad anymore because I put in the work, and that's all I can do.
Yeah. I feel that. But I will say this, I am still working on your playlist for you, but
Okay.
there's somebody that you should listen to. She's amazing. She's an amazing rapper. Her name is No Name. I don't know if you've listened to her before.
I haven't. I've seen the name
She's
around.
great. She's
Okay.
great. She started like a book club for prisoners, like people in people imprisoned, where she's supplying them with books so that they can learn while they're inside. She started like a book club specifically for people to join to read books about Black people, about the Black experience as well. She's an amazing artist. Also, I've been listening to a lot of Dochi. She's like, I don't know how new she is, but she's just come across my radar in the maybe the last year. She's really great too. Um, but yeah, overall, like you said, this album, I'm glad you picked this album, um, because it's like you said, it's great. It speaks so much to a shared experience. This is the most commercially successful album she's had, and to know that like that means so many people were able to relate to what she was saying. I think Solange has created this new version of herself, transformed into this new version of herself, and she's taken her artistry seriously, and she's expanded, and she's got her own record label, and she's composing something for the New York City Ballet that apparently is I just pulled it up, but she's the first show is at Lincoln Center in I think September 28th, and then throughout October. But she takes her artistry so seriously because it's like a craft she respects, and it's good to see her be able to just stand alone and get to show us how much she's grown as a person and share it with us. It's a very personal project while still being so inclusive to Black people across,
Right.
you know, different identities and, you know, class and all that. So she did an amazing job with this. I don't know what else to say besides this is like one of the, like you said, this is one of my favorite albums as well too. It's really just so good. Um, and I can't wait to see what else she does. Like I want to see what else she's going to do, what her next body of work is going to be at. Because I know she did an album after this one, but what's the next one going to be like? You know?
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to that next album, and like part of the challenge and like finding these masterpieces, right,
Mm-hmm.
is nothing else compares. I don't
Right.
I rarely go back to an artist's older albums. Like I
Mm-hmm.
started listening to Drake at what was that second or third album? Take Care. I started from there, and like I don't want to listen to the past because I know I'm not gonna like it. And sometimes it's challenging to like you have these hopes, and
Right.
the what was the name of the um something about home? Let me
I was about to say, is it far from home, or is am I thinking about Spider Man?
see.
I think it is. I'm thinking
The
about Spider Man.
uh not home. What are we doing?
Wait, is the song
Yeah,
called
when I
"Hold On, We're
when
Going Home"?
when I get home. That's the
Oh,
name of the
okay.
album. When I get home.
Oh, I don't know.
Um, and the cover has like a similar image to like
Mm-hmm.
this, but it's more styled. I was thinking that it might be a similar theme, but it just didn't hit. And
Yeah.
that's what it is sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Any closing points before we wrap up?
Closing points. Solange is incredible. Uh, Listen to Solange. Listen to her
Okay,
old stuff too, because the album she did before this one had some bops on it. Um,
okay.
Listen to just take care of yourself. Really, just
I like that. Right.
you gotta
Make
take
it
care.
about the individual. Right. Do what you need to do for yourself.
Go
Don't
take a
like
goddamn nap. Go wash your butt.
go crumble into
Something.
yourself. Right. Go
Crumble,
crumble into yourself.
crumble. Whatever that means for you. If it's you need a good cry or a fucking nap, go do it. Just take care of
Right.
yourself. It's important. Don't let the world beat you up.
Right. 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 All right. Yeah. Until next time. Peace.
Bye.